Aric Almirola says he may not return to NASCAR 2026, and Kaden Honeycutt is expected to join TRICON Garage in the Truck Series in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Rockingham Speedway, as it was confirmed on Friday morning that tickets are officially on sale for the Rockingham Speedway weekend. Of course, NASCAR will be returning to Rockingham Speedway for the second year in a row in 2026 for the Crafton Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, or O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and of course, I believe the ARCA East Series once again as well. The event was a major deal. Of course, it will take place on the Easter weekend once again. A lot of fans showed up. It was a massive success and a big deal for the sport. I think it was a huge deal to Rockingham to return to the schedule in 2026. Really exciting stuff, and glad to see the tickets officially are on sale for the track. Glad to see that Rockingham will have racing once again in 2026 like it did in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sydney Sweeney. Now, many of you probably saw that watched the championship race with the Cup Series race at Phoenix, which we're going to talk about later in this episode. But Sydney Sweeney was actually at Phoenix Raceway. Many drivers went up to kind of greet her. I think did some meet and greet stuff. Noah Grayson went up to talk to her. And even William Byron, who had a chance to win the championship yesterday, he had the chance and opportunity to talk to Sydney Sweeney. There was a really funny interaction between Austin Dillon and William Byron. That was a really funny moment, saying like you would have nothing on Travis and Taylor, which I thought was a really funny moment, one of the funniest things I think I've seen so far this year. But I think it's a big deal to see Sydney Sweeney out at the racetrack. Seems like she's actually a NASCAR fan too. She actually does, I believe, have a friendship with Ryan Blaney, so she was rooting for Ryan Blaney to pick up the win, and guess what? Ryan Blaney was able to go out and pick up the win and get the victory yesterday, so she got the opportunity to see one of her friends go out there and get it done. But pretty cool to see Sydney Sweeney show up to the racetrack. I think that's a pretty awesome moment for the sport. There were other big name people out there. I think Sophie Cunningham was also out there as well. So there were a lot of big names that were at the event, and I think it was cool to see her get the chance to be part of like the driver intros of the drivers competing for the championship. Pretty cool to see Sydney Sweeney have the chance and opportunity to be at Phoenix Raceway. Really exciting stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Trevor Huddleston. As Trevor Huddleston has won the 2025 ARCA West Championship. I believe this is Trevor's first or second ARCA West Championship, so massive congratulations to him. Trevor Huddleston, I believe, picked up a couple wins this year in the ARCA West Series. He did not win the season finale. Brent Cruz, who we'll talk about later, he was the one who went on to win the race, but Trevor Huddleston, due to his consistency and due to great performances in the ARCA West this year, he is the ARCA champion. Congratulations to Trevor. Trevor's been racing ARCA West for a very long time. I remember when Haley Deegan and Derek Krause, I think it was Cole Ross as well, were competing in the series at that time. I believe Trevor Huddleston was one of the drivers also at that time competing in the series as well. So for Trevor, I think this is a massive accomplishment for him. Congratulations to Trevor on winning the 2025 ARCA West Championship. He deserved it. He earned it. He did a great job this year. Congratulations to him on winning the ARCA West Championship in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, not only did Junior Motorsports not win the Drivers' Championship, but Joe Gibbs Racing had Aric Almirola competing for the Owners' Championship. And with Aric Almirola finishing second in the race behind Jesse Love, Aric would come off the corner and win Joe Gibbs Racing the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity Series Owners' Championship. Obviously, the 19th team had won the race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway with Aric Almirola, who picked up, I believe, 2 wins in the playoffs this year, and Aric picked up 3 wins in the Xfinity Series in 2025. Congratulations to Joe Gibbs Racing on winning the Owners' Championship. Not going to say they were the most deserving to get it done, but just like the format's kind of a little bit flawed with the Owners' Championship, among other things. But Aric put himself in the right position, and he did get a couple wins this year. When Aric was out there, he was one of the most competitive guys. So again, congratulations to Joe Gibbs Racing on getting it done. A well-earned and well-deserved victory for that. Not a well-earned, but also well-earned. But congratulations to JGR on winning the Owners' Championship. Good for them to get it done. Again, congratulations to them on winning the 2025 Xfinity Series Owners' Championship. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Rookie of the Years for 2025 for the Cup, the Xfinity, and the Crafton Truck Series. So for the Cup Series, Shane Van Gisbergen is the Rookie of the Year. For the Xfinity Series, Connor Mosack is the Rookie of the Year. And for the Crafton Truck Series, Gio Ruggiero is the Rookie of the Year. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when I did my predictions for the Rookie of the Years, when they announced the Rookie of the Year classes, I think these were the 3 drivers that I predicted were going to win the Rookie of the Years. Shane Gisbergen, not surprising, right? He, of course, had an incredible season in Cup with 5 victories this year and improved on ovals throughout the season. Conor Mosack put together one of the most dominant seasons in Xfinity Series history, despite not winning the championship, and despite not winning basically the Owners' Championship. He did win the Rookie of the Year for that, with 10 victories this year. And then Gio Ruggiero was the best of the rookies, 1 win this year, probably going to be a championship contender. Has been a guy that's been really successful this year. But congratulations to these 3 drivers on winning the Rookie of the Year. They've all earned it and are well-deserved champions of the Rookie of the Year. Congratulations to these 3 on winning the Rookie of the Year in 2025 for the NASCAR Series at this point. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Garage 56 for Toyota. As I believe it was reported by Steven Taranto, I believe on Saturday morning, that Garage 56, they will be bringing the Toyota version of Garage 56 out to Japan in the coming months. They're going to be putting on a demonstration run at Fuji in Japan. Now, the 3 big names, many of you noticed, there's 3 big name drivers that will be out there. One of them, of course, being Jimmy Johnson. Another one will be John Hunter Nemechek, and another name that you will recognize from the sports car world and also Formula One and also NASCAR a little bit is Kamui Kobayashi. There are a couple other drivers, I believe, that were announced as well for this. They didn't confirm exactly the other drivers, but these are the 3 big names that I recognize that are going to be part of this. I got to be real and honest, seeing something like this is actually really, really exciting. I think giving Toyota the chance and opportunity to have their own Garage 56 car is a big deal. We saw Chevrolet have their own Garage 56 car that ran the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Of course, we saw Jimmy Johnson, Mike Rockenfeller, Jenson Button, Jordan Taylor help with that program a little bit, and a few other guys got the opportunity to work with that program a little bit as well. But now Toyota is going to have their own opportunity, and Jimmy Johnson gets to be part of that, considering he owns Legacy Motor Club, was part of the Chevrolet side of things for the original Garage 56, and now we're going to get the opportunity to see that on the Toyota side of things, which I do find to be really exciting and really cool to see. So exciting stuff for sure. Pretty awesome that we'll see that version of the car out in Fuji. I think it's a really great moment for the sport in general. And again, I love seeing stuff like this. And more kind of interesting stuff that happens, the better it thinks for the sport. I think it's really interesting to see how it will play out. Nonetheless, pretty cool to see that we'll have a Garage 56 version for Toyota. I think it's exciting. Glad to see we'll get a chance and opportunity to show up at Fuji. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Daniel Suarez. Now, Daniel Suarez was interviewed by the media before the green flag dropped over the weekend at Phoenix Raceway and spoke about his departure from Trackhouse Racing. And was asked a question, I believe, are you sad about leaving Trackhouse? Are you happy about leaving Trackhouse Racing? And he says he doesn't view last week with Trackhouse with sadness, or doesn't feel anger and doesn't feel bad, because he knows that this was the last opportunity to be with the program. He is excited to be working over Aspire Motorsports in 2026 and has now begun working toward that for next year. And he also is a little sad. I think he said he's a little sad about leaving Trackhouse Racing, but isn't the most sad. Obviously, we knew that this day was inevitably going to happen. Daniel Suarez, of course, will not drive the 99 car in 2026, as Conor Mosack is going to take over the seat. Question is, what is the number going to be for Conor? We're not entirely sure at this particular moment in point. But we know Daniel Suarez will be taking over the 7 car for Aspire Motorsports as he takes over from Justin Haley, who no longer is with the program going into 2026. And he goes down to the Crafton Truck Series to work with Colleague Racing. Daniel Suarez's time with Trackhouse Racing did have a lot of ups and did have a lot of downs. Daniel Suarez, of course, in 2022 picked up a victory at Sonoma Raceway and had some good runs throughout the time over there. He had a lot of really strong performances. I remember Circuit America's a race that Ross won. Early in the race, Suarez was the fastest car in that event. And throughout time, he picked up some pretty incredible victories with Trackhouse Racing. Of course, in 2024, he won one of the closest finishes in NASCAR Cup history for 3 drivers across the line, winning at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And there were times this year where he showed potential stuff. But I think we all knew it was inevitably going to happen, that Daniel Suarez was going to leave Trackhouse Racing with how dominant Conor Mosack was in the Xfinity Series this year. But I think Suarez, I hope he can have a fun time over next year at Spire. And I know he's kind of talked about working with his teammates. Of course, he did get into some stuff with his teammates, most recently at Martinsville. But they'll have some time to work that out over the next few months. So we'll see how that kind of breaks out and kind of things go from that front. But it is definitely sad to see Suarez no longer at Trackhouse Racing anymore. But at the same time, I'm not shocked and surprised. I think Daniel Suarez is a solid driver in general, and I think he'll have an interesting year. It's going to be a big year for Suarez, though, because obviously Daniel Suarez basically is going to be in a contract year already, with Kyle Busch maybe likely heading over there in the near future. But Suarez did have a great time over at Trackhouse. Sad to see him go. But same token, same time, it was inevitable that he was going to leave Trackhouse Racing, and now his main focus is to try to run well with Spire Motorsports in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kentucky Speedway. It was reported on Thursday by Adam Stern that elected officials got the opportunity to speak on Kentucky Speedway. It seems like, according to what they're saying, they want Kentucky Speedway to be back on the schedule, and they said they're hopeful to race there at Kentucky Speedway once again in the future. NASCAR has not raced at Kentucky Speedway in a very long time. It'll be 6 years going into 2026, and likely probably won't be on the schedule for 2027 as well. Look, there's been a major push. As many of you seen on social media, there has been a big push to bring Kentucky Speedway back on the schedule, because a lot of people have seen how good the intermediate racing has been with the next-gen car at tracks like Kansas. I think even Texas in a little bit has improved, but it's still not been really good racing. We've seen great racing at Charlotte. We've seen pretty good racing at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We've seen really good racing at Michigan, which we never thought we'd probably see when they repaved the track about 15 years ago. We've seen good racing at the intermediate tracks. And people think that if we go to Kentucky Speedway, the racing is going to be as good as it used to be in the early 2000s. Here's a big issue I have. Kentucky Speedway is kind of like Texas Motor Speedway. When they repaved the track, they reconfigured the track. If they kept the original layout they had up until, I think, 2016, I'm pretty sure, I think that they actually would put on a much better show. I think we would get good racing if we had the 2015 layout. The problem is, when they've changed the layout for that, it ruined the racing, in my opinion. Outside of some good finishes at the end, what were some memorable moments at Kentucky Speedway on the Cup side of things? I can't remember much. Now, I remember when Harrison Burr and Noah Gragson had a fight after the Xfinity Series race in 2020, when everything was going on back in 2020. But I do believe that Kentucky Speedway just is not a track that's going to put on good racing, unfortunately. I don't rate this track that much. I don't think it's a great racetrack personally. I know people like the racetrack, and I get it. It's understandable. But at the same token, at the same time, the fact that people want Kentucky Speedway back, I'm a little frustrated about that, because, again, to me, I don't think it's going to be the best product. I think the racing isn't going to be the most exciting, to be honest. I don't want to see it come back on a personal front, and I think we should move on away from Kentucky. I get they want to bring some money into the track, which I completely get it. It's understandable. But at the same token, at the same time, not the biggest fan of this track. I don't think it's the most exciting, and to me, I don't want to see Kentucky Speedway back on the schedule, so I don't think it would be the best track to put on racing for NASCAR, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some angry drivers. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Phoenix Raceway, which we're going to talk about that championship here in just a short little bit, there were some drivers who are definitely not very happy after the race concluded. One organization that many people caught that was having a little bit of a feud was Alpha Prime Racing. Joe Williams, who's a crew chief for Parker Butzlaff in the 14, and Tommy Joe Barnes, the car owner of that car, they got into a little bit of a confrontation. There was an argument that was taking place and a fight taking place between both guys. Now, Tommy Joe Barnes did speak to the media after race about it, and basically, it seems like everything was calmed down after a while after they had it. Basically, it was a competition, I think, on tires. I'm pretty sure what kind of tires to take. Apparently, they had a scuffed set of tires from the number 98 truck from the Truck Series race with Ty Majeski, and they were looking to maybe use those tires, and for some reason, Joe Williams, according to them, decided not to use those tires, and that's where I think we saw Tommy Joe Barnes and some of the people in the organization get mad and upset. Sometimes the passion will come into play, and especially with the season-ending frustration, you basically don't have the best. You sometimes lose your mind a little bit when you've been frustrated all year. On a positive for Alpha Prime Racing, they did end up getting a top 20 in the owners' points, with Brendan Poole finishing in the top 20 by 1 point. So massive congratulations, Alpha Prime Racing, on that front. Rumors are circulating that team is going to switch over to Ford in 2026. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that front. But I understand the frustration on the other side of things. Then you had Ryan Sieg and Christian Eckes. Now, actually, the confrontation between those guys really was not a confrontation. Of course, we saw Christian Eckes run into the back of Ryan Sieg. Christian went over to apologize to Ryan Sieg for what happened, and even Christian did go on social media and apologize once again to Ryan. He said it was still one of the stupidest moves I've ever made in my career. I did not mean to reckon to Ryan Sieg. It was not intentional. I just thought it wasn't a good move on my part, and I feel awful for running into Ryan Sieg, who had a great opportunity. I'm appreciate Christian for taking accountability and responsibility. I think Christian is a much better driver than what we saw in that race. And it's not like Christian Atkins was running bad. Christian had a really good run going. It's just that he got a little bit up. It seemed like he just made a big mistake in that corner. And sometimes we're going to make mistakes as a driver. He was a rookie, for crying out loud. And I'm glad he took accountability and responsibility for the incident on the track there. Then, of course, there was, I think, the 10 team, and I think there was a pick, remember, for Alpha Prime. They got into a little bit of a feud, if I'm not mistaken. So we had a lot of people getting upset and angry on pit road after the race, but I think it's an ending of a season frustration. I think that's why people were upset, is because the end of the season came into play and people were not happy with the way things were going, and I can understand that in some way, shape, or form, that people were upset at the end of this year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt Crafton. Now, Matt Crafton, over the weekend, completed his final Craftsman Truck Series race as a full-time driver this weekend at Phoenix Raceway. Now, Matt Crafton did confirm over the weekend that he will be racing part-time in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. He also did say he plans to race some dirt race in 2026 as well, and he plans to race at types of tracks where he actually can race. And that's where he kind of went in on the Truck Series a little bit, where he criticized the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. He says a mile and a half racing in the Truck Series has not been that fun to him, where you can be completely wide open, and he's also not a big fan of the engine platform that the Truck Series has currently at the moment. I know a lot of people have their thoughts on Matt Crafton. I saw a lot of people calling out Matt Crafton, saying, oh, Matt Crafton's not that good. I do want to show my respect to Matt Crafton. He picked up 15 wins in the Truck Series, which I don't think many drivers can say they've had 15 wins in truck competition. Yes, over 25 years, but still he won a lot of races and did have a lot of success. And I'll be real and honest, I think the Truck Series needs more horsepower. I understand they want to have good racing in trucks and parity on the same time as well. But at the same token, he's not wrong about the issues of the Truck Series. The Omar engines don't give enough power, and I think they need to up the power in the Truck Series a little bit. Because if you up the power, you can let these drivers race a little bit more. But going back to Matt Crafton for next year, how many races he's going to run? He'll probably run Bristol is my guess. He'll probably run Martinsville. He's probably not going to run the super speedways next year, and it will likely be with Thorsville Racing in 2026 is what team he'll likely end up racing for. But I do want to congratulate Matt Crafton on a solid career in the Craftsman Truck Series. I get the frustration with the issues of trucks. There's a lot of fundamental flaws that need to be kind of fixed with the Truck Series at this point, and I really would love to see more races and horsepower up. I think the horsepower needs to be upped in trucks. We'll see what happens on that front. They do, in fact, decide to go up on the horsepower for the Truck Series in the future. I'd love to see that for sure. Hope we do see an increase in the horsepower for next year for trucks, as I think that'd be the best way to get them more spread out and the racing to be better, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Freeway Insurance. As it was announced on Friday before the State of Sport address took place, it was announced that Freeway Insurance will become a premier partner of NASCAR in 2026 and will replace Geico as a new premier partner. It was also announced in this as well that they will be the sponsor, I believe, for the Restart Zone going forward as well. So instead of the Geico Restart Zone, it will be the Freeway Insurance Restart Zone. And on top of that as well, it will be the entitlement sponsor for the Phoenix Fall Cup Series race in 2026, where they will be called the Freeway Insurance 500. Obviously, Freeway Insurance, we all know, has been a sponsor of, I believe, Daniel Suarez for the last 4 or 5 years. Now, for those wondering about the sponsorship with Daniel Suarez, they will continue working with Suarez going into 2026, which isn't shocking and surprising. They are going to sponsor Suarez for a majority of races in 2026, including the Daytona 500. So for Daniel Suarez fans, you don't have to be too worried and too concerned about that. Now, obviously, there were some rumors earlier this year about Ty Dillon maybe getting Freeway Insurance as well. It seems like that's not going to take place for next year, as he still has not signed a contract extension with College Racing for next year. But I think this is still a really, really big deal. I love that Freeway is stepping up and continuing to grow their presence in the sport. And I know that Freeway Insurance may be not well known across the country, but I do think you're going to see more Freeway Insurances popping up and probably a lot more ads coming in as well from Freeway Insurance, and that might convince a lot of people to start using Freeway Insurance in the future. But I think this, again, is a big deal for the sport to have another big sponsor stepping up and becoming a premier partner next year. They joined, I believe, Xfinity, Coca-Cola, and I believe Monster Energy too as the 4 premier partners. They will be that. There was talk about them being the entitlement sponsor for actually the Xfinity for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Almost became the NASCAR Freeway Insurance Series instead of O'Reilly. But I still think it's a big deal nonetheless. And pretty cool that Freeway Insurance has become the premier partner for 2026. Love seeing a sponsor like that come into play. I think it's really good, and I think it's an exciting deal in general. Really solid stuff, and nonetheless, pretty good to see that there was a chance and opportunity for that, and good to see Freeway Insurance will be the entitlement sponsor or a premier partner in 2026. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Mosack. Now, we're going to talk about the Truck Series Championship race here in just a short little bit. But I wanted to focus on talking about what happened with Conor Mosack during the Truck Series race. So Corey Heim is easily cruising to a Crafton Truck Series win. Not the win of the race, Lane Riggs was going to win, but Corey was cruising to winning his first ever championship in his third try to have a chance at the championship. Well, Conor Mosack had a tire that was basically going down and a tire rub, and NASCAR told him on the radio that you need to get off the track and you need to come to pit road and fix it. His team was extremely adamant, saying, no, we are not going to be coming to pit road. He would stay out and it would end up hitting the outside wall with the flat tire, bringing out the caution with 3 laps to go, and that nearly cost Corey Heim the championship. NASCAR actually called Conor Mosack, Blake Bainbridge, and I believe the spotter of the 81 truck, and I believe some of the other people from McAnally Hilgeman as well, were called to the trailer after the race to basically get screamed at by NASCAR. Because NASCAR knew if Corey Heim had lost that championship on Friday and Conor Mosack was the reason that they lost the championship, there would have been a lot of people in the industry that have been really livid at Conor Mosack, who likely will have a ride not with McAnally next year. Now, why did he do this? I have a little bit of a theory. I do think there was some race manipulation going on here because he drives the 81 truck for McAnally Hilgeman Racing. Tyler Ankrum, who is competing for a championship, also drives for McAnally Hilgeman Racing. So I think that he intentionally stayed out on the racetrack to try to affect the outcome of the title so that Tyler Ankrum, who wasn't even a factor in this race to begin with, I think he tried to affect the outcome so Ankrum could have a shot at winning the championship. NASCAR's got to stop this race manipulation. It's clear as day there was race manipulation going on, and personally, if Conor, even though Conor didn't screw the championship for Corey Heim, I still think NASCAR should penalize him because NASCAR was adamant that for him to get off the track. They were trying to affect the outcome. It was clear as day because if NASCAR is telling you multiple times to get off the racetrack, fix your tire rub, get whatever you got going on fixed, you need to listen to NASCAR in that situation. And the fact that he didn't, again, it's clear as day race manipulation. I don't know what else to tell you. And again, I understand if we go back to full season format, you're going to have race manipulation. But I do believe that Conor Mosack and the 81 team should be punished for that. They should be suspended. I'm not saying they should be suspended, but I think penalties do need to be handed out at this point. I really hope we do see them get some sort of penalty for this in the next couple days. We'll see if they do, because to me, it was unacceptable that the championship almost got affected by something like that. And I'm glad to see that NASCAR stepped in and said this is unacceptable. The fact that he almost cost a championship is totally ridiculous and uncalled for. And to me, I think it's terrible that we almost had a championship deserved by Corey Heim lost after having a dominant season, all because a driver tried to affect the outcome of the championship in some way, shape, or form. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, I kind of touched on this story last Friday, I believe. But I want to talk about something that Kyle Larson said to Bob Pockers on Friday, where Kyle Larson basically said that he's adamant that he is not planning to leave NASCAR anytime soon. He says that he sees those questions all the time and kind of gets a little bit annoyed that people, even like Cliff, for example, his crew chief, basically asks, are you planning to leave NASCAR anytime soon? And Kyle Larson basically has to tell Cliff, I'm not planning to leave NASCAR because if I was looking to leave NASCAR, I would have already left at this point. He says, yes, I love dirt racing, but if I wanted to go race dirt racing altogether, I would have already left NASCAR at this point and gone and done dirt racing. I think Kyle Larson does have a really good point there, and I think he is absolutely right in that situation. Because Kyle Larson, he's a dirt racer, but Kyle Larson also likes to race a lot of different things. And Kyle Larson, of course, picked up a second Cup Series championship yesterday. He's one of only 3 drivers who's won a second Cup Series championship. He even said it in the media days for the championship 4. He said he plans to race in NASCAR until he's at least 40 years old. Kyle Larson won't turn 40 for another 5 to 6 years, or 7 years at this point. He's only 33 years old currently at the moment. And let's say Kyle Larson continues to race and averages 3 to 4 wins a year, Kyle Larson could have a 50 to 60 career win in the sport. And I know that Kyle Larson probably isn't the biggest fan of this championship. He's probably not the biggest fan of the system that we have, which we know there are changes coming to the system in 2026. And thank God there are going to be changes next year. But I think for Larson, he wants to continue racing in the sport, and I think that's the most important thing at this point is Larson is not going anywhere anytime soon at the moment, which I do find to be really exciting and really, really cool that Larson doesn't want to go anywhere at the moment. He wants to continue racing in the sport, and Larson's earned that right to stay long term. He's in a contract year next year technically, but Larson, of course, will probably get a contract extension considering he just won his second title. They're probably going to announce a contract extension for Larson here very, very soon, probably till the end of the decade, which at that point Larson will be 38. And then he can start thinking about retirement, but Larson's probably not going to retire anytime soon, which I think is the best thing for the sport because of how good of a driver Kyle Larson is. Now he's one of the best drivers to race in this sport. So for Kyle Larson, it's good to see that he ain't retiring at the moment and sticking around at least for the foreseeable future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, I believe there was talk about the hypercar that Ford will have in 2027. And there's been talk about maybe Brad Keselowski over the last couple of years being interested in expanding RFK Racing. He's been open to maybe going back to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in the future. He's been also open about opening up a Crafton Truck Series team once again in 2026 or maybe in like 27 or 28 or something like that. But one thing that got brought up is the Ford hypercar. And according to Brad Keselowski said to the media, he says he's actually opening to joining IMSA with Ford and being the leader of that program in 2027. RFK Racing is a team that has been expanding over the last time. They used to be a team that was a lot bigger than they are now, but they're continuing to expand their efforts. Of course, going into this year, they had 3 cars in the NASCAR Cup Series, and while none of them made the playoffs this year for the Cup Series, RFK Racing did have a very solid season. Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece had amazing seasons. Chris Buescher was one of the most consistent drivers in the Cup Series this year, and Ryan Preece had a breakout year in the NASCAR Cup Series and just barely missed out on making the playoffs in 2025. And Brad Keselowski, despite the slow start, ended the year off on a really good note. But I think it'd be really cool to see a team like RFK Racing go into IMSA. They had a team in IMSA many years ago, and I think the GTO series many years ago in the 90s. Of course, I believe that RFK Racing did win some Rolex 24s with drivers like Robbie Gordon, Calvin Fish. I think Dorsey Schroeder won some races for them there. I think Brian Till competed with them, I'm pretty sure, at one point. A lot of big-name drivers over the years who are great sports car drivers got the opportunity to race for RFK. I think Mark Martin even almost won a Rolex 24 in a different class, I'm pretty sure. And I think even drivers like Jeff Burton got the chance to do something with the IMSA program for RFK. So I would absolutely love to see RFK come back to IMSA. I think it would be an absolute amazing and great moment for the sport for something like that to happen. And I hope it does happen for sure because we need to see more teams from the NASCAR side go in and expand. And I also hope in the future as well, we see RFK open up their O'Reilly Auto Parts program once again like they had for a long time and open up the Truck Series program for Brad Keselowski Racing. We'll see if that does happen in the future on that front, but I think RFK expanding their presence in different motorsports is a really big deal. It would definitely be really exciting for sure. I hope it does happen. I pray it happens. I hope we do get to see them be in the series in the near future, and we'll see if it does happen in 2026 or 27 when the hypercar program comes in, with Ford expected to be in IMSA in the near future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim. Now, Corey Heim on Friday was, of course, the 2025 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series champion with an incredible season in the Craftsman Truck Series. But he came very close to not winning the championship in 2025. We already talked about the fact that Conor Mosack brought out a late caution at the end of the race with 3 laps to go when Corey Heim was easily en route to picking up the championship for the first time in his 3rd try. Corey Heim ended up having a great season, but he ended up actually taking 4 tires at the end of the race, while most of the guys like Ty Majeski and I think even Tyler Ankrum would end up taking 2 tires. But there were a couple of trucks that would stay out. I believe that Stephen Parsons and Cole Butcher would end up staying out on the restart. And going into turn number 1, Corey Heim would probably make one of the most daring and incredible moves that I've ever seen in Craftsman Truck Series history, as he went 7 wide to the inside and would jump from being 7th position all the way up to 2nd position on the inside with Ty Majeski. There would be a big wreck that would happen right behind him as Cole Butcher and Tyler Ankrum had contact, and a lot of trucks would get collected in the big crash and incident, including Tyler Ankrum. They are very close to getting the white flag. Luckily, the caution came out before the white flag could take place. And then on the ensuing restart, Corey Heim had a fantastic and really, really good run, took off for the race lead, and came off the corner and picked up the Truck Series championship. Corey Heim this year was absolutely 1,000% deserving of the championship, and the only driver, in my opinion, how incredible he was, that deserved the championship this year. With the win at Phoenix, Corey Heim had 12 wins in 2025, the most in a single Truck Series season. He had 19 top 5s this year, I think almost the most in a single season ever. He had, I believe, 22 top 10s, so he only finished outside the top 10 3 times this year, had like a 5.1 or like a 5.0 average finish, led 1,627 laps this year, the most in a single season. And something that got brought up by the NASCAR Insights account, he's the first driver in NASCAR history to lead laps in every single race in any series. In the over 75 to 76 year history of the sport, Corey Heim became the first driver to lead as many laps as possible and for lead laps in every single race this year. Even though Heim won the championship, he absolutely 100% deserved it. He should have locked this championship up a long time ago. And the fact that the only reason he won this championship technically at the end was because he took 4 tires instead of 2 and was easily going to win the championship before that caution came out by Conor Mosack, it absolutely tells you what is absolutely wrong with this championship format. The industry, though, I think was having a sigh of relief. I don't think a lot of people were totally celebrating Corey Heim winning the championship as much as there was a sense of relief after the Truck Series race. Because there is no reason, any way, shape, or form that Corey Heim should have ever been in that position. In the full season format, Corey Heim would have locked up the championship like 3 or 4 races or even 5 races prior to when he actually locked up the championship this year. But luckily, he deserved the championship. He earned the championship this season, put together a great performance, dominated the Truck Series race for that matter. Lane Riggs is probably going to win that race before that yellow came out late. But the well-earned and well-deserved win for Corey Heim. Congratulations to him on winning the 2025 Crafton Truck Series championship. Just a phenomenal run for Corey to get it done this year. A well-earned and well-deserved victory again. Once again, congratulations, Corey Heim, on being the 2025 NASCAR Crafton Truck Series champion. A well-earned and well-deserved championship for Corey Heim in the 2025 year and 2025 season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Xfinity Series championship. And there's a lot of controversy around this Xfinity Series championship. Now, the driver dominating most of the year was Connor Zilisch. In every single statistical category outside of laps led this year, Connor Zilisch was the most serving driver. With 10 wins this season, I think he had like 19 top 5s or 20 top 5s, 23 top 10s, and had like a 7.8 or 7.9 average finish. But despite the fact that Connor Zilisch was the most deserving driver to win the championship without question this year, the driver ended up winning the championship this season was Jesse Love. In the industry, and many in the industry, and many fans were not very happy with the outcome of this championship for Jesse Love. One of them being Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick had said earlier this week on the Happy Harvick podcast that had a guy like Anchor or a guy like Connor Zilisch, well, Anchor won the championship, and guys like Zilisch and Heim didn't win championship, it would be a dumpster fire and embarrassment for the sport. And judging by Kevin Harvick's reaction on social media on Saturday night, you could definitely tell that Kevin Harvick was not very happy about the outcome, and many in the industry were really mad about it as well. Now, this is nothing to take away from Jesse Love. Jesse Love did what he had to do in that specific race to do what he had to do. And credit to him, he put together an all-time great performance. There's no denying that was one of the best performances Jesse Love has put there, and Jesse Love should be allowed to celebrate. And I don't think people should be going after Jesse Love in this situation. It's not Jesse Love's fault that we have this format that we have currently at the moment. But if we had the full season format for the Xfinity Series, Connor Zilisch would have been the champion without question. And I think he should have won the championship on Saturday. And I think he had very funny comments after the race, basically saying, I guess the lights weren't shining at the brightest for us. Even though Connor Zilisch, by the way, in the last 23 or 24 races, had one finish outside of the top 10, that being at Talladega. It's his worst finish since Spring Martinsville in earlier this year, the crazy race, where he finished 13th, were 2 finishes outside the top 20 at Super Speedways at Talladega. Connor Zilisch performed all year long. Connor Zilisch had, a 17 or 18 race streak of finishing inside the top 5, broken by Talladega, by the way. He basically had a streak going all the way back from when spring was hitting up to when fall was beginning and the end of the season was showing up. And yet somehow he is still not the champion. I mean, the lights shone the brightest for Connor Zilisch this whole entire season, an historic rookie season, and he didn't win the championship. He at least got the Rookie of the Year. Thank God for that, because if Carson Quaffle would have beat him, that would have been even a more big travesty at this point. But I will say, this is definitely, without question, one of the biggest travesties we have definitely seen in NASCAR history. The fact that a guy that dominated all year long doesn't win the championship is absolutely ludicrous. I don't think as many people would have been upset if Justin Allgaier won the title, because Justin Allgaier, say what you want to say, I do think Justin Allgaier has been the only guy this year in Xfinity that's even been remotely close to Conor Mosack. And I think when I say remote close, he actually was pretty close in certain areas this year. But I do 100% believe that he should have won the championship, that being Conor Mosack. And again, Jesse Love has every right to celebrate, and Jesse Love shouldn't take it away from him, because Jesse Love did have a great race, and it's not like Love was completely abysmal this year. But if you sum up the whole entire season, and this is a big problem I have with this format, it should have been Conor Mosack winning the championship this year, and not Jesse Love this season. I think it's a big farce to the sport. I think it's a disgrace to the sport that it ended up the way it ended up happening. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes we've seen in the sport in quite some time. And I think NASCAR absolutely should be ashamed. I don't know how you're going to explain how the guy that dominated all year with 10 wins and having a great average finish and having 18 or 19 top fives isn't your champion because he finished third and a guy was really good at Phoenix won the race. I don't think you can defend that. I don't think it's acceptable, and I think NASCAR will have a lot of explaining to do to try to defend it, and if people need to stop defending this system because it's a stupid system, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Cup Championship race from yesterday. Now, yesterday's Cup Championship race was marred in some controversy because the driver who dominated the race most of the day was, of course, Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin will lead, I believe, 209 out of 312 laps in that race and was on the verge of picking up the win in the championship. Unfortunately, though, with 3 laps to go in the race, coming to 3 laps to go, William Byron would unfortunately be hit by the flat tire fiasco and the tires having issues throughout the day and would hit the outside wall really hard, prompting NASCAR to go ahead and throw a caution in that situation. There would be a late race restart, of course, and Hamlin and his team would come down pit road. A couple of drivers stayed out. I believe Brad Keselowski, Ryan Preece, and Alex Bowman would decide to stay out while everyone else came down pit road. Kyle Larson's team would actually take the gamble and take 2 tires on pit road, while Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe, the other 2 championship contenders, would end up going ahead and taking 4 tires. What I think they were thinking at that point is what they saw on Friday night with Corey Heim making the move to basically take 4 tires and going for the win. The problem is the Cup Series drivers are a lot more talented than drivers in the Crafton Truck Series, and they also have a lot of really good drivers in the field, and you have former champions and current champions in the sport. And Kyle Larson's team took the gamble. On the ensuing restart, Kyle Larson would have a fantastic restart jump up there. Denny Hamlin would try to pursue him, but guys like Logano Blaney unfortunately cost him a shot at getting up to Kyle Larson. It would not be enough for Denny Hamlin, as coming off the corner, Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski put on a great finish, and Ryan Blaney would come off the corner and pick up the win. And Kyle Larson would come off the final corner and pick up his second NASCAR Cup Series championship and get his second title, joining the lights and becoming, I believe, only the 18th or 19th driver in NASCAR Cup history to win multiple championships in Cup Series competition. Now, a lot of people yesterday were justifiably upset about the outcome of this race. Now, don't get me wrong. No one should be going after Kyle Larson at this point, because if we're going off of full season points, if we're going off the full season format, Kyle Larson would have not only been the champion in the current format we have, but he would have absolutely been the champion in this format. So Kyle Larson, without question, deserves a championship. And I said this yesterday. On any of these 4 guys winning the championship this year, whether it was Kyle Larson, whether it was Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, William Byron win the championship, it doesn't matter. It would have been a deserving champion for all those guys because there wasn't a standout driver this year. The problem is the way this race ended. And the fact that a tire lottery really screwed Denny Hamlin out of a shot of winning that race. And you can see Denny Hamlin being so upset. I don't think there's been a more heartbreaking situation in the sport since, I would say, 2007, Mark Martin, 2016, Carl Edwards, when he lost out and Carl Edwards went to retire. Not saying Denny Hamlin's going to retire. I think Hamlin's actually going to be committed and do 2 more years. So Denny Hamlin doesn't feel like he wants to race anymore. And to be honest, I can't blame it with how stupid this system is. And then, of course, you had 1992 when Davey Allison lost a championship that year on the final race. But the difference is you had a full season help while, of course, Alan Cookie just had an incredible charge at the end of the year. But I think this is a big talk about the format. And again, no disrespect to Kyle Larson. Larson does deserve the championship. I don't think anybody should be taken away from Kyle Larson because Larson was one of the best all year and put together a championship-worthy season. The problem is, and I think everyone can agree, is how stupid this format is. And luckily, the one race championship, it sounds like, is going to be going away at the end of this year. I think especially after all the race that happened this weekend, how trucks ended, how Xfinity ended, how Cup ended this year, I think people in general are just sick and tired and fed up with this format. And who can blame them at this point? This format is an awful way to crown a champion. You don't get the most serving guys winning these championships, and it turns into absolute fiascos at this point. And a lot of people want to see Denny Hamlin win the championship. They built the storyline up for Denny Hamlin to win that championship with him having an incredible drive, a great race. Everyone talks about Hamlin choking. Hamlin did not choke. His crew chief made a mistake, but then again, he was a sitting duck on pit road, so what can you do in that situation? I just think at this point, I'm so glad this format's coming to an end. I've already said enough of my thoughts on this. I'm just glad the format won't be a thing after this year. They're changing it up. We may be going back to the chase. Jordan Bianchi mentioned that on the podcast. I think that's compromised, but I'm one full season points back, man. I really, really do at this point because I'm tired of complaining about the system every time, and I'm definitely ready to move on and discuss maybe a chase format would be better at this point. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what the format is. They're not going to have a decision on that for a couple months more than likely, but I'm definitely sick and tired of this format. But congratulations to Kyle Larson on winning the championship. He earned the championship this year. Even though he didn't lead a single lap in the race, he still earned the title and championship and won under the rules we had. And I don't think anybody should take away from Kyle Larson with how good of a season Larson had in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story in today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Cup Series drivers. Now, I did a video covering this story on the channel on Saturday morning because it was originally reported by Kelly Crandall on Saturday and then confirmed by NASCAR that NASCAR will be allowing the lower drivers in the Cup Series to run more series in the lower series races in 2026. According to what was reported, drivers will be allowed to run more lower races in 2026. Drivers that have 3 or more years of Cup Series experience who have had 3 full seasons in the sport will get the opportunity to run more races in 2026. For the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series next year, instead of having only 5 races you're allowed to run next year, it will be upgraded to 10 races in 2026. And then, of course, for the Truck Series, that has been improved from 5 to 8 in 2026. But one thing that I think is going to get overshadowed is the age changes for the lower series as well. For the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, instead of having to be 18 years old to run at any type of track, you now can run at 17 years old to run races at tracks that are 1.2 miles or shorter or road courses. One of this means is that this is, of course, the Brent Cruz rule. Brent Cruz is expected to run in the Xfinity Series full-time next year, and with him only being 17 years old and not turning 18 until March 30th of next year, he basically wants to go full-time in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series with Joe Gibbs Racing. And I think this is going to help Brent Cruz get that chance and opportunity. Personally, I don't really have a massive issue with this move of only running select races because there's not really any drivers under the age of 18, in my opinion, that are ready to have a shot and opportunity. The only one, in my opinion, I think is ready is Brent Cruz. Obviously, guys like Max Reeves aren't even 16 at this point. Guys like Tristan McKee are not even ready at the moment, but I don't really want those guys also up in Xfinity, so I'm glad at least they're going to 17. I think it would have been fine also with 18, but I don't think this is even the worst move either. Now, talking about Cup drivers getting more chances and opportunities to run in the Xfinity Series and the Crafton Truck Series, I'm very conflicted on this situation. On one hand, I completely understand the move they're making, right, for more Cup guys to run down. Xfinity drivers, O'Reilly Auto Parts drivers have said, and Truck Series drivers said, Cup Series drivers coming down and running in the series, they've had the opportunity to learn from them, and they tend to get better. And I think it will help development in some way, shape, or form on getting drivers that are in the secondary series the opportunity and shot. And I think that that's a little bit of a positive right there. The negative on the side, though, is the fact that this could take away from opportunities for younger drivers who are very talented to move up through the ranks, because Cup guys now might take those rides, and even smaller teams at this point may lose the opportunity to bring drivers in who would, instead of guys that deserve a shot and opportunity, you might get drivers that bring more sponsorship funding coming in on the Cup Series side coming in, and more teams showing up and filling up rides in the series for Cup guys to run. But I think this is a little bit of a balance and at least a little bit of a compromise. Now, one thing a lot of people kind of overlooked in this situation is the format. Again, we're expecting a change in the format. They put these rules out with the current championship format that we have at this moment right now, but it's been expected there's going to be a big change to the format. There won't be a one-race championship. We'll see what the format exactly is next year, but the format, of course, is changing for 2026. But going back to this at this point, there were only 3 drivers this year who ran more than 5 races, right? It was Kyle Larson, who I believe ran 5 races. Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain were the only 3 drivers this year that got 5 races. And I think that, and Carson Osborne, I think, ran through 4 or 5 races this year in trucks as well. But I really don't have a massive issue with this personally. I think having more Cup guys in will make the series a little stronger personally. And I think it will make ratings go up maybe a little bit in some ways, even though I think ratings for the secondary series have been really good. They were plans to talk and changing this. I'm not shocked and surprised by this move. We are expecting a potential change to the lower series next year. It's not surprising. I know some people are upset. I kind of understand it. But at the same token, same time, it's a rule that was expected to change. I can't be too angry about it, as I kind of expected that NASCAR was going to change this rule. Not shocked by the rule change overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're doing a little bit of a silly season update here, as there has been a lot of silly season reports that have come out over the course of the last couple days. And today I'm going to go through everything that was talked about over the last couple 4 or 5 days and discuss all the moves that might be happening for 2026. Let's first begin by talking about Corey Heim. Corey Heim's 2026 plans. A lot of people are wondering what is going to be going on with the Truck Series champion for 2026. Bob Pockrass knows that it sounds like Corey Heim will not have a full-time ride in any of NASCAR's divisions in 2026. The rumors have been currently at the moment is that it is expected that we will see Corey Heim race part-time in the Cup Series. Probably a lot of Cup races next year, 2311 Racing, maybe with a team like Sam Hunt Racing, but there's some questions up with them having 2 full-time cars next year, and is expected to run part-time with TRICON Garage in 2026. Corey, in my opinion, very talented. I wish he had a full-time ride in the Cup Series next year. He probably should be in that 35 car. Riley Herbst is probably going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and maybe Heim will get in that car in 2027. He should be full-time in Cup, but Heim will not likely have a full-time ride in 2026. It was also confirmed as well over the weekend Dawson Sutton will be returning to Rackley Racing in 2026, as reported by Declan Wayman. We will see Dawson Sutton return to Rackley next year. Dawson had some decent runs here in the Crafton Truck Series, in my opinion. He didn't really set the world on fire, but I think he showed some promise and potential. I think he's a talented young kid. Just got to get a little bit better, show some improvement, but I think Rackley had an up-and-down season. We do expect that he will be back next year. He has confirmed that. Moving on to Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith did put out a post yesterday, basically saying, I had a great first year with Front Row, and I can't wait to get back here for 2026. While Farmer Motorsports has not officially confirmed it at this point, it is expected that Chandler Smith will be back in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series with Farmer Motorsports next season. Chandler, in my opinion, probably should have made it farther in the playoffs than he did. Chandler was one of the 4 best guys in trucks this year, in my opinion. Picked up 2 wins this year, one of the few guys that got multiple wins in the Craftsman Truck Series this season. Showed a lot of speed and potential. Kind of got screwed out of a shot to compete for a championship this year because of mechanical issues at Darlington and Bristol, but he had a really solid year nonetheless with multiple wins and will likely be a championship contender in 2026. Moving on to Kaden Honeycutt. As I mentioned before at the beginning of this episode, Kaden Honeycutt is expected to go to TRICON Garage in the Craftsman Truck Series next year. Kaden is expected to replace Corey Heim in the 11 truck next year. Scott Cibadelli, a lot of you have been wondering what's going on with Scott Cibadelli for next year. I would expect Scott Cibadelli to continue being the crew chief for Kaden Honeycutt, crew chief of that 11 truck next year. Kaden, in my opinion, extremely talented. Did a really good job of harbor freezing racing this year. I think Kaden Honeycutt does have a lot of promise and a ton of potential, and I do think that Kaden Honeycutt is going to be extremely successful next year in trucks and be a championship threat and championship contender. Moving on to Brent Cruz. Like I mentioned earlier, Brent Cruz, as Bob Pockrass notes, Brent Cruz is expected to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series or the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026 and drive the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Brent Cruz, in my opinion, extremely talented guy, one of the best young prospects coming up currently at the moment. The last few races, especially in trucks, he's been extremely impressive. Had a winning truck at Martinsville, had a winning truck at Phoenix, had a winning truck at the Roval. I'm telling you, this kid has got a lot of potential to be a Cup guy. He's the future replacement of Denny Hamlin, in my opinion. I think he will be Denny Hamlin's replacement, and I think he'll be ready for that opportunity in the future. But Brent Cruz, like I mentioned, will be with Joe Gibbs Racing next year in Xfinity. Moving on to some of the rumor mills. RSS Racing. There's been a lot of chatter that RSS Racing is expected to go to Chevrolet in 2026 and go back to Chevrolet. They were with Chevrolet for a long time, and they're expected to go back to Chevy in 2026. Ford's program is going to look a lot different next year. There are rumors that Alpha Prime Racing may be switching over to Ford next season. That has been a rumor that's been brought up at this point. But RSS Racing will likely continue their alliance with the Haas factory team and go to Chevrolet in 2026. Chris Rice spoke about calling racing in their future in Xfinity down the road, but he also said that we should know the driver lineup for the Crafton Truck Series program by the end of this month. There are still 1 or 2 trucks that need to be announced. There's expected to be an all-star truck next year, and we also are expecting another full-time driver to be confirmed. It sounds like it's coming down between maybe Christian Eckes, maybe Daniel Hemrick, maybe Jeb Burton. There's some drivers that are unknown. McAnally-Hilgeman's team that Christian could end up at next year, but Christian is being linked over to the Kaulig Racing program in 2026 in the Craftsman Truck Series. He could also be headed back to McAnally-Hilgeman. There's some rumors around that team too I want to touch on. Daniel Hemrick, he's been linked over to McAnally once again, and same thing goes for a driver like Conor Mosack not being back at McAnally next year. He is linked over to Viking Motorsports for 2026 to drive the number 99 car. Again, Haley Deegan, we've mentioned her. She's been linked over to McAnally-Hilgeman for the Truck Series next year, but nothing official at this point on that front, but she continues being linked over to that program for 2026. Let's move on and talk about Spire Motorsports. There's some rumblings around this organization, and the NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia Account talked a little bit about that at this point. It sounds like there are going to be potentially 2 or 3 trucks next year for Spire. There were some unknowns of Spire. There's been talk they could have an Xfinity Series or O'Reilly Auto Parts program for 2026. But we're hearing that they're going to have a program once again next year. And it sounds like there is going to be a couple trucks that are going to have split drivers next year. The first one revolves around Carson Hocevar and Tristan McKee. Carson Hocevar is expected to run all 8 of the Truck Series race that he's eligible for in 2026. He's expected to get behind the wheel of the truck. And then once Tristan McKee does turn 16 years old, Tristan will get in that truck for likely the remainder of the year. Tristan McKee, a lot of people have their thoughts on him. I think Tristan is a talented young kid. He, of course, won the ARCA race at Watkins Glen at 15 years old, becoming the youngest driver to win an ARCA race ever. But he also does have a little bit of an over-aggressiveness. I guess you could say he's kind of like Carson Hocevar with the over-aggressiveness. And I think he'll get better on that for sure. But you have a lot of people in the industry that aren't the biggest fans of Tristan McKee. And people aren't the biggest fan of him exactly at this point. But Tristan is expected to run some Truck Series races in 2026. Moving on to the other Spire Motorsports truck. They're going to have another all-star truck, it sounds like, for next year. It sounds like that truck will be split by Kyle Busch more than likely. Michael McDowell is expected to make some starts for the Truck Series program next year. You could see guys like Kyle Larson go down there and run. I think William Byron's I mentioned as a possibility. And even Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott could be candidates for that program. Even Connor Zilisch could be a candidate to run with Spire Motorsports at some point next year. Moving on to Joe Gibbs Racing, Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola, of course, did end up winning the Owners' Championship in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs Racing this year. And Aric Almirola kind of spoke about what his future is in Xfinity. It sounds like Almirola's kind of up in the air on what his plans are for 2026. There was talk earlier this year that he could be back in Xfinity or the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series for next year. But Aric may also retire. He didn't even think he'd be racing once again in 2025. So it sounds like Almirola might not be returning to NASCAR next year. There's some talk about that. If Aric does retire officially, he's had a great career in Xfinity and a great NASCAR career at this point. And I would love to see him maybe come back, but also wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't return next season. Aric has had a great season in the Xfinity Series with 3 wins this year. One of the most consistent guys when he did race. Of course, did get rough things up. Won the Owners' Championship. Got wrecked by Austin Hill this year. But Aric's future's up in the air, and he may not return after this year. Couple final things. Let's talk about Jeb Burton. Jeb Burton did say that he has signed something for 2026. We don't know if he'll be back with Jordan Anderson Racing or not. There's been a couple teams he's been linked to for next year. One team that was mentioned by the Daily Downforce that I've heard as well. He is a potential candidate for Spire Motorsports in 2026. I do think Jeb Burton will be solid over there, Spire, if he ends up over there, but he also may not end up over there in 2026. He also could return to Jordan Anderson Racing next year, which would not be a bad move for his career at this point, considering he's had a ton of success with Jordan Anderson Racing. I would think he likely will be back at Jordan Anderson Racing or Spire Motorsports. Moving on to Parker Retzlaff. Parker Retzlaff did say that he is going to be announcing his plans in the future. There's a lot of rumblings that Parker might have gotten an upgrade for next year. There's been rumors he's linked over to AM Racing, but there's rumors that Sigma Racing might be buying AM Racing in 2026. There's a rumor circulating around that. But Parker, it sounds like we'll have a new ride for 2026 from what I've heard, and it sounds like it will be an upgrade like AM Racing next year. And finally, Frankie Muniz. Frankie Muniz did not officially announce or indicate it, but I do not think Frankie Muniz will be back with the Raymond brothers in 2026. He's hoping to continue racing once again in NASCAR next year. And Frankie, I don't think will be with the Raymond team. My best guess is Frankie Muniz will end up at an organization, maybe like an upgrade, like a front row. Maybe if Rhett Jones has her truck program open up again, maybe he goes over there, maybe goes back to ARCA. We know Cletus Farron is linked to go to their ARCA program next year once again, or could do some truck stuff with Colleague, but who knows at this point. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the remainder of silly season and where some of these drivers end up. We'll have a silly season update video, kind of talk about all that stuff in a video tomorrow. But here's some of the big things from over the weekend that were kind of talked about on the silly season front for the series. So, that's going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are thoughts about some of the things we talked about today, like new sponsorships, other stuff, talked about championships for Cup Xfinity trucks, some of your thoughts and comments below, and some of the silly scene stuff as well that we talked about on the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today, we're going to be doing a video talking about what to expect during the off season for NASCAR. We'll discuss that on the channel. Then, of course, tomorrow we are going to have a silly season update dropping on the channel. Then Wednesday, we should have a NASCAR news video dropping. If any major news breaks over the next couple days, we'll talk about it as well. And then, of course, on Thursday and Friday, we're going to have some special videos starting to drop. We should have the first video for the end of the year coming out. We'll probably talk about ranking all the drivers for 2026, and then, of course, some of the 2026 stuff should be coming out very soon as well. We got content coming up. People like Haley Diggin, Shaman Gisberg, Carl Roberts, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bo Wallace, Ross Chastain, Shelby Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Cletus Vaughn, Dodge Ram, Brad Keselowski, Brian Priest. All the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and coming weeks, along with Will Brown, Brian Finney, Cam Waters, and Junior Motorsports too. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.